It's beautiful here. To see you
Yeah.
there.
It's the Iron Curtain here. It is always something else.
Okay, we ready?
Right? We're ready. Right. An encoded BlackBerry.
Somebody's prepared.
Yes.
It's a business we're in, right?
Right.
So these are features that we do with the ISS. We attempt to do them once a month, but with schedules and everything else, it's a challenge sometimes. And the idea is that these are educational for people in the industry. So be as open as you want to be.
And you'll edit out all the bad stuff.
No. So this is one of the things. This is why this is called the live show, because this goes out unedited as it happens.
Corey,
right
you lied
now.
to me. You said you'd take
I
out
thought
all
it
the
was
bad
edited.
stuff.
Yeah?
All right.
Is there a live stream that we can send to folks?
No.
It'll be a YouTube link.
We had to go at that, and the equipment to do it is quite expensive, and we're not there yet.
Understood.
In time. And the thing is, this is the fourth one we've done now, and they're getting more refined, and the pace is getting right. So when we are ready to live stream, we'll be on it. So, and one thing that I must say, actually, we've done 3 subjects so far, and the topic's never finished at the end.
Yeah, so
It's
what
always
were
like-
the topics?
The first one was sexual harassment in the industry. Sorry, that was the first one. The second one was bribes and backhanders
Yeah.
in the industry. Certainly not finished with that one. And the third one was the future of the US new build market.
That ended fast.
And that one might be going with.
That was quick.
Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay, technically speaking, with Ben, so do you want us trying
Ignore
to
them, ignore the camera, it's us in the circle.
Okay,
So-
and just let whatever
Circle
camera
of
picks
trust.
us up?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, roll these.
If I sit back far enough, none of them pick me up.
No. I've made sure you're
Perfect.
not shielding them.
Perfect in cybersecurity.
Fuck. This is the old school technique.
Yes.
Okay, everyone look at the camera just so we can get a screenshot. And we're back. Between two Yetis, we're live here from the headquarters of the ISS, the International Superyacht Society, and we are behind the wrap. I'm getting good at that intro now. Today, this is part 4, episode 4, where we're discussing the cyber threats, not necessarily to the industry, but as a whole, really, isn't it? From suppliers through to owners, to vessels, to businesses. And so we've assembled our expert panel. Everyone's in agreement?
Yes.
Good.
All experts.
What's cybersecurity?
You always want to start with the definition. That's what I find. The definition, it sets the baseline and everybody's on the same page.
Good
That's a
point.
good idea.
So let's quickly go around the circle. So, Corey,
Yes.
who are you and what do you do?
Sure. So my name is Corey Ranslem. I work for International Maritime Security Associates. We do maritime security, risk management consulting, and cyber falls in as a piece of that.
Okay, and it's IMSA.
IMSA, yep. International Maritime Security Associates.
How long has that been going for?
So we started the company back in 2013.
Okay. It's a familiar name.
Potentially the International Motorsports Association is what you might be thinking of. They go by IMSA, we're IMSA.
Okay. Big differentiation.
Right. I love motorsports too, by the way, so.
And to Corey's left, we have...
Mark Theissen. I work for a company called K4 Mobility. It's a company that was founded by 3 gentlemen in Chicago from the aviation sector. You may have heard of a company called GoGo, in-flight connectivity.
Oh, yeah.
We have decided to take it upon ourselves to come in and provide a modern, digital, simple, reliable, and powerful platform for everybody and anything to communicate. And cybersecurity is at the core of that.
So you guys are GoGo.
Ex-GoGo, yes.
Oh, what's happened to GoGo?
I don't know. Check the stock.
No, because I remember that very distinctly. It's
Okay,
the first time I was ever on a plane, I was able to get Wi-Fi.
correct.
And
It was like in the 90s.
in fact, I've got a bone to pick because I remember it throwing something on my computer, and every single time I went somewhere with a public Wi-Fi, it was like, "Would you like to connect via GoGo?"
I got you. I can't speak for GoGo because I'm not ex-GoGo, but I can tell you that...
Pass it back and see.
Yeah.
Michael.
Michael Reardon. I have a company I work for a company called Reardon Yacht Consulting. I also
Work for them, or it is
I also
yours?
run it,
Okay.
but yeah, and so our main job is property management of large yachts and project management. So we're sort of more the end users and a business that also has bumped into cybersecurity issues. So.
I know, and so thank you for coming because you're going to be quite open about being a victim,
I don't know.
potential victim.
I don't know.
I think
Yes.
we all are.
Yes.
Well, this is one of our panelists today was going to be Graham Lord. He can't come today, family commitments, but one of his things was saying that everyone's been a victim,
Oh yeah.
whether you know it or not. Everyone has. So this is going to be interesting.
Correct.
Our fourth panelist, live from New York, is Ben. I can't remember. How do you say your surname?
Dynkin.
Dynkin. It's the I, not the Y.
Yes. So I am the CEO of Atlas Cybersecurity. We are a cybersecurity services company based out of New York, offices in Texas and Florida. And we actually are getting into securing the maritime industry now. I think I can actually say this, but we are partnering with another company, and we'll actually be launching our service publicly at the Monaco Yacht Show. And it's the first time we're publicly announcing that. So you guys got the scoop.
Awesome.
All right.
Nice.
Maggie, we got a scoop.
Yay. Congratulations.
Are you allowed to say which company you are or not?
Yeah, absolutely. VBH.
Oh, very good. Ah,
Some small AV company, right? Somewhere in Holland.
yeah.
Tiny.
Tiny little company.
All right.
Oh, good. Right, so we're in good company then.
Yeah, yeah.
So, from a cybersecurity point of view, as a pedestrian, which I will consider myself, I know about changing my PIN codes and passwords on a regular basis. But beyond that, I'm sort of blind, I would say, to what the dark web is and what techniques people use. How does it? I know it's a very large problem in the world, and somebody was saying actually it's getting worse nowadays because we've got all these passwords and because we've got all this supposed security. We're actually believing we're putting more of our trust into the machine. Is that right?
I think the pace of the growth of the internet and what the internet brings to the table is by far outpacing the pace of us securing it. So that's definitely presenting its own challenges. So, I mean, it's basically, to me, it's split in two. We're going to have to trust it eventually, whether we like it or not. And there's always going to be good guys and bad guys. And we hope that the good guys on our side. And that's a constant battle.
Treat anything electronic. You should always treat it with suspicion. Is that a good start to be? If I send this out, I have no idea where it's going, who's ever's going to see it, or where it's ever going to sit on a server.
I don't know about that.
Is that just
I mean,
looking at a very
that's
pessimistic-
probably a and Corey, you're going to be able to. And Corey and Ben probably can address it technically better. I would guess from a user standpoint and for someone who's lost their identity and had spoofing attempted several times at our business, that there's a vulnerability when, probably most of us, especially the practice of spoofing, which is someone sending you what looks like a familiar email saying send money here. And for us in our industry, it would be like Mark Theissen spelled maybe just a teeny bit differently.
Which isn't hard.
Or actually something from Mark but the email is slightly changed, and instructions that are very familiar with what's currently going on in our office. And from what I understand, the way that's accomplished, someone's gone in and looked at our email and studies a thread, and then predicts or knows that invoicing is about to occur. And they just send a bill and say, hey, our banking details have changed, send it here. And so the companies that are really probably most vulnerable to that would be companies doing high volumes of large dollar transactions, which are yacht management companies sort of by definition, taking care of a high valued asset that spends a lot of money. So yeah, we're pretty vulnerable, and specifically, we've been the first time we were attacked in that way. We had gone through the protocol of our banking, where I'm the final approval after the accounting department sets up wires, and I was told wire's good, approve it, and it went. And fortunately, the bank's cyber security caught it and rejected it, let us know. And then we started a newer protocol that's pretty simple of whenever banking details aren't the same, we have to talk to a person. Now, of course, that can lend itself to a robot answering, I guess, Ben, or eventually. But right now, that's worked really well. And we've caught several instances otherwise where first mate on a big boat is saying, hey, I've got this final invoice for tank cleaning, please pay it, bank details have changed. And the English is just a teeny bit, like a pronoun or something. It's like, that's not the way that guy usually sounds. And once you understand the threat, you're kind of looking for it and can deal with it a little bit better, but it's constantly there.
I've heard about this happening with people who have builders or plumbers come to their house and then they send the bill after the work's been done. But I never really thought it would actually happen to a business. But yeah, I mean, that's...
Yeah, and the wires that they've tried getting us for were in tens of thousands of dollars. So it's way. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to highlight one thing that Lee was saying. Business email compromise, that's the kind of scheme that we're talking about right now, is a multi-billion-dollar enterprise every year. The FBI has studied it in depth. Interpol is very involved in it, Europol, because it is just a massive, the scale of it is almost hard to fathom how frequently it happens, not just that it does in fact happen.
One of the things I wanted to go back to was, Lee, was your original question. Should we be scared of everything, all the time, everywhere? And I think when you look at cybersecurity, every company is different. Every industry is different. Every operation, every boat, every client that we come in contact with is different on how the basics of the network are set up, how they monitor that, how the cybersecurity piece works, and the human factor. So I think when you look at it, there's a lot of threats out there. But as you start to boil it down, you can have all the electronic monitoring, all the great technology, but we kind of look at it from the human factor side. To your point, Michael, is, hey, if you don't teach the people what to look for and some just general practices in place, you can have all of this high-tech stuff and spend millions of dollars a year on it, and it's going to be worthless without that people connection. And to the point on when you look at the cybercrime, that if you send a wire somewhere that it's not supposed to go and those people get it, and it moves in multiple jurisdictions, the problem with investigation and enforcement is whose jurisdiction is it? Right. So the wire started in the United States, but it's been through 10 different countries and jurisdictions. The boat was Cayman Island flag, and they were in, St. Croix, or, like the British Virgin Islands. So who has the jurisdiction for when these things happen? And that's a major issue. Is, right. Well, is it the FBI? Well, it started here, but now it's here. So now we have to pull in multiple organizations and agencies to investigate it. So the investigation side gets really complex. And to Ben's point, that's why it's a multi-billion-dollar industry, because there's, once it's out there, it's literally impossible to be able to track it and probably never get it back.
The thing that you just said that scared me is it's an industry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's a business to
100%.
defraud people.
Yep.
And I think one thing that's really important as we continue to talk, I think it's really useful to set the stage. Who are these people? You know, we think of a term hacker or cyber criminal as being this, black-faced, hooded, shadowed person. But it's really instructive when you realize the different kinds of actors there are. So, you have everything from the young teenager who's just starting to dabble in this somewhere in the world that's not particularly sophisticated, all the way to sophisticated cybercrime syndicates. The Carbonic Group is a great example. Nobody's really heard of them. I doubt anybody sitting around the circle knows them. But Carbonic they've stolen billions of dollars. They've targeted exclusively the financial services industry. And they even had a scheme at one point that they literally went to ATMs in third world countries and just hacked them to pull the cash out. So these are sophisticated, organized organizations. It's not just, the chaotic, neutral that is just out to wreak havoc. These are targeted, sophisticated, funded organizations that are engaging in what we call tailored access operations. They're identifying a target and they are going after it. And that required,
No, I was just going to say, and you can take it one step further. You're talking about the non-state actors. You also have a whole slew of state actors. When you look at sanctions against Iran and North Korea, these people have to survive somehow, and through cyber crime is one of the biggest ways that some of these syndicates are fronts for actually fairly large state actors who are a part of that. So it's interesting to see how those two pieces over the last few years have really come together between state and non-state actors. So you're dealing with very, very sophisticated people when it comes to these different crimes.
Bottom line, it's the golden age for hackers. That's what it comes down to. And that starts at state level all the way down to
This is what
you.
blows my mind, though, because I would have thought we would have got so tight now with thumbprints and face recognition and stuff like that. But really, it's...
Yeah, but when it comes
Boom
to, for just in, if you just think about the number of passwords I manage for a small business, there, I think, are 80, or more. And that's everything from go, whatever, an online thing on the plane, account to Bank of America. So, I think one of the things that, especially Ben and Corey, are big proponents of teaching is like if you just try to make yourself less of a target by doing the basics of changing your passwords and not using, I love my baby in every password,
But the way in is the weakest link in the chain, right? So if you've got somebody in your employ who's...
Yeah, but again, what does that employee have access to, and then how sophisticated are they getting past a firewall and all that stuff?
It gets very complex.
Yeah.
If you really want to spend some time on this, we can go for...
We've got 38 minutes, come on.
We can go a long time.
This isn't going to end at 38 minutes. It's scratching the surface on what's out there. But there's a lot of basics that people can put in place when you look at just the beginning of network design. And that's where some of the initial failures happen that we've seen, or that the networks are not designed in a way to look at the traffic, and there's not a separation between operational networks and guest networks, and these things are crossed, and if you can get into one, you can access the other. So even some of the basics and how you set up your IT system, and I know the network and the system administrators always get on me when I say this, but network and system admins are not security experts. They're the ones who can run the infrastructure, but need to work with companies like mine or with Ben's company to come in and say, okay, here's the network infrastructure that you need. Let us help you design it from a security perspective from the beginning so you get it right from the start. And if you don't do some of those basics, that's where you're already behind the curve when it comes to cybersecurity issues, that just the internal networks. Our for our company, we have our own SOC, so we monitor everything that we do, but we have multiple networks, and how that is set up and designed, there's probably 2 people in the company who have access to that, of what that actually looks like, and things change all the time. It's really complicated, but it helps us to protect our operations, customers, and what we do. And we went in to set it up that way on purpose, with security being the forefront and then functionality of what we need to do second, because we knew the security piece was the most important. And I'm sure as Ben is in the industry too, is you've seen boats and marinas and how these networks are set up are, crazy on the access that you can get just from getting access to one network. So a boat pulls into a marina. Oh, I pick up XYZ boat's Wi-Fi. I can get into that. Now, oh, wait a minute. I got into the owner's side. I got into the operations side, and these other pieces that don't have simple protections in place to be able to.
The good news is formats such as this and formats that Corey and I have worked in the past. We've launched a full-on seminar series throughout the year where we get in front of captains and crew and the industry to establish the awareness and give them tools as to how they can protect themselves, right? And is key to all this. And it's very easy to scare the living crap out of each other here and the whole industry on this topic. But what it comes down to is that we live in a digital world, and it's only going to continue evolving, and we got to work together in protecting ourselves, and especially in the maritime business, because we are most vulnerable to just about any industry out there. So to me, I'm sure Ben and everybody else here would agree, we need to look up to best business practices in the financial industry and the health industry. Because if you're looking at it, those are some key industries there. And yes, I'd like to think cure cancer as well, but we need to look up to them for some help, because it's all about working together here.
I think it's okay to scare the hell out of the industry, honestly, because the industry needs to wake up to these issues. Maritime, and not just large yacht, maritime as a whole is down here, and when you look at healthcare and financial up here, and we all need to be way up here. Mm-hmm. So from that standpoint, is as we go out and do these seminars, as you and I have done, and we talk to people, I haven't seen a lot of change in the industry take place, and I've been talking cybersecurity now for 4 years on a pretty regular basis, and we talk about the same thing in the same seminars. So if it's not people not being awake or paying attention, but it's only going to get worse, because I look at it, I guess, from a legal perspective. If we don't have the ability from an FBI or law enforcement or Interpol to investigate this, well, now it, to me, becomes civil. Well, wait a minute, my boat pulled into your marina and you didn't do best security practices on your marina Wi-Fi network. My boat was hacked through your network, so now I'm going to sue you because it's your fault and your liability. We're not there yet, but I think eventually that's, what's the liability of the network failure? Who's responsible for that?
You don't have to look far. I mean, we've heard the horror stories. I'm just trying to keep it bright to a certain extent.
Sorry, it's my job to pull it down.
This is Mr. Dark Side. I'll try to be the Mr. Light Side here.
Mark's
right here, but I just want to add one point. A lot of what was just said is 100% accurate. The maritime industry, particularly in the yachting world, is not up to the level of even the basic best practices that you'd see in even a small business, in terms of network segmentation, in terms of basic security posture, hygiene, things like that. But the threat profile for a yacht is so much higher than for the average small business. I like to get up, I give, charitably a lot of seminars to small business owners, and I leave them with a top 10 list. And I generally tell them, if you do these 10 things, you'll be safe. I'm not going to promise anything, I'm not going to guarantee it, but you'll probably be safe. I can't say that same thing for this industry, for a variety of reasons. One, the VSAT range, just at sea, is so narrow of an IP range, it is possible for a criminal to systematically go through them and pick their targets. We've made ourselves so vulnerable between the readily available information from AIS systems, when you can log on to Vessel Finder, correlate that data with a search engine like Shodan, which is showing you all of the systems that are scannable on those IP ranges. And you can go through it, and in a couple hours, I can figure out exactly how to control everything in a boat. That's one piece. The second piece is these, it is a very niche industry with a very high-profile kind of clientele. If I'm a criminal, I know this is a good area to go after. I'm going to hit pay dirt, whether it's a business email compromise, whether it's an extortion scheme. You know, we have all these connected cameras and basically microphones. These are all things that can go from being a useful security tool to being a tool for blackmail. And 3, this is something that we haven't seen much, but it's starting to change. As you look at industrial control systems, they've been networked for a long time, but now they're not just networked, they're internet facing. Because let's take an engine, for example, or a navigation system. It's important to get network connection data to make them the best that they can be. But those same vulnerabilities, if I'm a criminal, hey, you know it's a really good scheme for me to make a quick buck? I will take your engine and navigation system ransom while you're in the middle of the ocean with the owner on board or a charter on board, and I'm going to demand $100,000. That will get paid very, very quickly, but that's a very, very real risk.
Somebody doesn't want him to say this.
Somebody just hacked that.
Thank you, Ben. Well, I can pick up on a little bit of that as well, as far as when you look at the vulnerability of systems on board, and there is some vulnerability. Navigation in a lot of cases is less so, just because everything on that piece is not connected, and from a nav standpoint, it's very difficult realistically when you look at the professional side of it to take control of a boat and say, I'm going to steer it into the rocks.
Right.
But the issue that you are looking at is, hey, can I get in and corrupt the navigation data and make the chart say this water here is good?
So this is a thing. This is a real thing, isn't it?
Yeah, and that's part of the deal, is to be able
But
to.
that goes back to training. It goes back to the human factor, because let's face it, what is the stat? Like 30% of the actual attacks happen through inside vulnerabilities, and that's employees first and foremost. So a captain that is leaving the ship's network or leaving the bridge network open to the external world, that's just very poor behavior in my opinion. Because most of the times the way I see that set up is totally separate. And then means to actually update charts and the likes. We all know to use USB sticks, right? That's most safe, right?
Sure.
Anyway, I was just testing everybody here, but anyway,
Sure.
we know the horror stories around that one, right? So it goes back to the training factor, right? Knowing not to use USB sticks to update your charts, for instance, or leave the bridge network vulnerable to outside world.
Ben's back in the room.
We get back to
Welcome back, Ben. You pretty much had finished a thought, but was there something else?
Great moment in this.
Yeah.
But I think the thing that's, I'm almost I need to apologize for how lightheartedly I started this, because it's a
big deal.
serious subject. We are dealing with the most powerful, influential, and wealthiest people on the planet, and people are trying to attack them at every single moment. And we, as this industry, are one of the weakest points.
I'm going to flip that again, because it is dark.
Take
no
it
doubt.
there,
But there's some hope out there.
I'll pull it back down. Don't worry. Don't worry. I'm gonna pull.
There is some hope out there. I've been in the electronics field and the communications security part of the business for about 15 years now. It started all physical, like you do a risk assessment on board with the cameras and whatever else. Nobody worried about cyber attacks at that time. And it quickly grew into that, of course. So on the positive end, there is companies and there's initiatives such as Be Cyber Secure at Sea, where basically a collaboration of maritime companies come together to work together and collaborate on coming up with best business practices and creating economies of scale, where they create, like, for instance, a security operations center. So these are people in the background watching the I's and O's and seeing if there's suspicious activities, it's reported and detected and then responded accordingly, right? So that's going on, which I'm happy to say that there's professional companies, leaders like us that are actually doing stuff about that. Secure message platforms, for instance, is very key, because with IoT, Internet of Things, we know that's going to introduce only more vulnerabilities. And then encrypting and the like. So some of these practices are starting to finally come down to our industry, and I can assure you that we're on the right path, but we are way behind. That I want to definitely say. So we need to work together and bringing this to the forefront. And
is it possible to have a boat? Is it possible to go back to old school boating and not have sat navs? And
I doubt it. We live in a digital world. Well, in a boat that's commercially registered and
gotta have
No, actually not. But here's the thing. Here's the irony. The sort of I don't know, synthetic situation that Ben was describing, and actually, Corey, I've seen you do a demonstration on where a boat's heading was affected by some invasive
GPS spoofing or something.
Yeah.
GPS spoof.
We keep losing Ben. This
Yeah,
is
poor
this is
Ben.
part of, you know.
Yeah,
Perfect
live.
example.
It completely logs me out of Skype. Should we be worried?
Well, you definitely have a virus, but you being Lee, I mean, that's not a surprise.
So,
Can we just clear up one quick misconception? Mac versus PC. Macs do get viruses, don't they?
Yeah,
Yes.
everything does,
So
except for
nothing's safe.
BlackBerry.
So what is it?
The actual BlackBerry?
Is that because nobody uses it?
The only thing
No,
it
I
doesn't-
still have one. People, I made this point. I was doing a cybersecurity talk, and I took it out, and I go, "This is the reason why I still carry this phone." I mean, Verizon, they're killing me and trying to get me off this. But yeah, this is, I mean, yeah, you have to look at kind of how you do, what's out there, what do you use your device for? And sometimes a little inconvenience for how you use a particular device goes a long way when you look at, you know, the cybersecurity piece. And when I upload stuff to the cloud, where is that? Who has control of that? Who can get to that? Who can, you know, get in and grab that? Because sometimes a little piece of information here or there put together makes an attack a lot easier.
So it doesn't sound like, I mean, I always thought you would be the source point for people coming in, you know, jumping in on the signal. But it's really...
Connectivity is huge. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the backbone. It's like... it's like electricity, right? If you don't use it properly, you get zapped and you could die, right?
Well,
so this is a soft approach to that, and you can take down companies and people. I mean, in a bad way.
And the whole thing is, I think it gets back to one of the points we were talking about earlier is how's that designed? So how's that communication through VSAT or fleet broadband or whoever you use, whatever that is, how's that designed when it comes in? Then it moves forward through your boat's network.
Correct.
How's that designed is so important, and that's what I've seen is people are like, well, we got to have the AV working because the owner wants to see this movie in this room at this time, and I don't know. Okay, so we're just going to unplug this box, connect it in, and go. And now there's an open pathway, you know, to be able to do that. And to Ben's point of what he said, the IP addresses of boats are extremely easy to get. If we want to find the IP address of any boat, cargo line, cruise line, large yacht, anywhere in the world that has a satellite, we can do it in probably less than an hour. And most of the boats haven't even changed their default passwords for some of the frontline equipment.
If they know their passwords, there's another thing, right? So you get a mixed bag out there, but that's a scary thought. And this is part of the seminar series we created, is to defy the myth around networks. There's no magic behind it. It's quite simple. I mean, it's computer science, and if you set it up properly and you know your IP range, you know your passwords, and you can at least do something about attacks and not be as vulnerable.
What do you
So
do with
can-
passwords? Are you supposed to write them down, or are you supposed to just remember them, or...
Well, back in the day, you put it just on a piece of paper, slide it under your desk, right?
Yeah.
And nobody.
So if you want to
In
break
fact,
it,
I didn't realize this, but this is my password for my Wi-Fi at home.
Can't hack that.
Stick it on bits and pieces and just keep it around.
One of the things that we've recommended, and we actually use this practice internally, are there's some really good password managers where you can load the passwords, usernames, everything in the password manager, and it's basically a secure vault to manage that. So there's certain key access to be able to get into this and say, okay, I can put all 80 of my passwords in there, and then
that's where our 80 live.
And then you can go in there and say, okay, I know that, you know, for this password or whatever, and there's some really neat tools that you can set up, and those are fairly secure. There's nothing that's immutable. There's nothing that, you know, that is completely secure, but the password manager, changing your passwords, you know, that's kind of the start.
I'll tell you what's interesting. Sorry, just one thing. No, sorry, I'll let you.
No.
You're my
Go ahead,
panelist.
finish the thought. Go ahead.
No.
I
Because
insist.
I've forgotten what I was going to say now.
So no, because we got cut off when Ben
Let me try and get it back.
offered that one point, and then I was talking about Corey
Spoofing.
and the GPS. And here's the thing that goes back to, you know, human error and best practices, and just so being as old as I am and going from when Mark was in diapers running boats, that, you know, the charts were just paper. And then the first electronic charts were this teeny little green screen that buzzed. I was like a dog, only I could hear it. No one, it drove me crazy. But and now just being on boats once in a while at sea, the things that are astounding to me are, one, has nothing to do with cybersecurity. Ambient light that comes from a bridge at night. You can't see anything outside with your eyes. It's like, what do you guys do for night vision? And then the second thing is paper charts. So if someone does hack into an electronic charting system and mess with things, most boats in practice, even though it's law and you're tested on this, and we spend money for chart updates, they're not using paper charts. So when things start going bad, and I mean this is a while ago, but the QE2 was a perfect example. They went either east or west of Nantucket, heading up toward New England, and turned too far left, and ended up going aground when they're like, well, the charting systems were in the right place, and no one was looking at the crossover to a manual sighting and all the things that are basic navigation. So there's a lot we take for granted that a certain generation of people in practice don't even know how to do anymore, don't have a concept of how to do it anymore.
I love the paper backup. I'm big in that. And hey, use the electronic systems, understand, but multiple inputs to this. What does this look like? Something doesn't look right.
Especially when something's not feeling right.
Let's go to what's the secondary or the tertiary on that. And I just think as a prudent mariner that it's always a good idea to have that on board, because you never know what's going to happen with this system. And if you say, wow, this is a black swan event and we have no access to anything. Well, I still have paper charts. I can still, take a rough range. I still have an idea of what's going on. And so with that, I'm always a big person in backup, and not just that, but just with everything. And
so for me, the one thing that screams a problem is that how on earth do you expect captains to know this level of stuff? I mean, their job is to drive the boat and make sure that's working.
Right.
This is, you need your level of, not you, but your level of expertise.
No, here's what you need to know. You need to know what you don't know, and then call experts that can help you. And do certain basic, stupid, simple things.
But you are yacht management, aren't you?
Yes.
So actually, you are the person relaying the support.
I'm the person probably dealing with everything going bad, and in the example of the owner suing the marina or whatever, I'm on because very often I'm not controlling, a company like Mark's, let's say, that's installing a network. I don't insist on bringing in cybersecurity, even though I probably should,
Can I just give you an example then?
Yes.
If somebody installs a Wi-Fi pad to control lighting on a boat, that's not encrypted and it's a vulnerability.
Absolutely.
The smallest thing is a vulnerability.
Well, yeah. I think Ben was saying the control systems.
Yeah, IoT, Internet of Things is what we're talking about here, more or less. I mean, all of these CCTV cameras, everything's on record here.
TVs.
You name it. You'd be surprised.
Alexa.
I mean, even the camera, right? The harmless camera on this thing.
Yeah.
You don't know if it's on or not, right?
Yeah.
We're assuming it's off right now.
We're assuming,
yes,
that we are,
So and with that though, I think there's a balance, Lee, of what you're saying, that we've got. I mean, if you look at the dark side of it, it can be overwhelming, but that's true of a lot of topics. And then there's what can I control, and the things I can control, they might not be perfect, but they probably make me a harder target than the dummy next door who hasn't done anything. So
I look at it like this is, with a boat or a business, I'm not an expert in everything. So I have an insurance agent who helps us put our corporate insurance together. We have accounting to help us make sure that we stay in compliance with tax laws and regulations. We have legal to make sure that there's no legal problems. So I even take that a step further as a boat to say, hey, you guys, you're not experts when there's a major engine issue, so you bring in engine people. You should look at cybersecurity exactly the same as there's people out there who are experts. And when you say, hey, I want to design design a network or I want to look at cybersecurity, I should bring in an expert to help me. And people are like, oh, it's so expensive. And I tell everybody the same thing. You're going to pay a little bit now, or you're going to pay 10 or 20x later on. And look at the example of Maersk. You know, they were not directly hacked. It came in through accounting software on a third party in a server and basically wiped everything out. The only reason that they didn't lose everything is one of their backups happened to be in Africa offline because of a power failure at that facility. So they had to physically bring that server from Africa back to their headquarters to bring the entire company back online. And it's so how
The
much
entire company?
The entire company. How much did that cost them? There's experts that I've seen that say in total that will probably cost them close to $1 billion. I don't know if that's right. I've heard everything
Best
from
business practices now,
500
I mean,
to-
you can have a peace of mind because there's such a thing as digital clones. So in cases like this, you can replicate this quite easily and simply. But again, I think it's aligning yourself with the right partners, right?
Yep.
I think Corey is making a very good point here.
a very long point.
Right, no.
You're too happy, and I'm just like, no, pull it back down.
I think one of the things, though, which would be good here, is that you guys are protecting the owners and the crew and stuff like that. As suppliers, supplying into these shipyards and boats and stuff like that, what can the industry do to be protective?
So we need to do this as a basis, and then there you got to get more professional with it. But one thing I wanted to stress on is you want to be on the forefront of this. We got to take it serious. If we don't, we are all going to be victims.
Yep.
So if you look at the governing bodies such as IMO or BIMCO, they're already coming down the pipe with serious guidelines, and I'm sure very soon mandates that will actually require port state control to assess your cyber vulnerabilities. And I'm sure on the Coast Guard level, that's somewhat happening to a certain extent. So they're not going on board to check your engine. They're going to do that still, of course. But they're going to look into your cyber security plan, right? And that's becoming part of the ISM as well.
Cybersecurity
this is
plan.
coming down. So,
Wow.
so this is all coming. So what I'm trying to say with this, don't let them put this on you. Be a step ahead while working together to show more than just a range of IP addresses or how you manage your passwords. Right? Those are the simple basics. But we can work together and set up best business practices through healthcare industry, through the financial industry, through aviation, to just distribute that across the offices, across the ships and yachts, and at the least, then we can say, hey, look, we're doing all the right things here.
So Lee, I think, again, did you have a point though?
No,
Okay.
believe it or not.
So here's I'm going to make a correlation or an illustration. The insurance market has been turned upside down since the storms of 2 years ago, and then Lloyd's sustained in general the Lloyd's market, which is a huge segment of the world's insurance, maritime insurance, and then going down to the subset of yachting insurance. For a few years, they had X amount of dollars in premium with 3 times X in losses. Not sustainable, so they bail. But as they bail, half of the yacht insurance market just vanishes.
And where does that go?
Good point. It goes to other players, but now you've got a supply and demand issue. And so we've seen everything from insurance premiums and renewals going up over 100%, 300%, to shockingly, a couple of them just staying flat. All that to say is, wow, big deal. Now, on a big boat, an insurance policy, let's just say heading toward a 60-meter boat, going to cost somewhere in the range of $5 million a year to operate. Depending on the asset value, the insurance policy is going to be, maybe it was $100,000 a year, and let's just say it goes up to $200,000 a year. Compared to $5 million, it's nothing. It's something that I have to be responsible for, but in the overall operation. And so to add in a line item in our budget for cybersecurity when we have, right now it's communications, it's sort of, and here's, just when you look at the macro of this and doing a budget for a boat, there's communications, and then the subsets are VSAT, Ships communications, which are usually cell, SIM card sort of stuff, and then satellite. And in satellite, we throw in the things that are sort of required for the
GMDSS or something
yeah,
like that.
for the
and broadband.
GMDSS side of things. So there's only 3 categories there, but that generally that first one of the VSAT is the pipe into the boat. Well, actually, let's look at it. There's when the boat's not anywhere near shore, that's it. It's VSAT, and those IPs that we've talked about are vulnerable. But then the boat comes in and their fancy little switch says, okay, no more VSAT. Now we switch to either the, let's say, and I'm just a marina, Pier 66 is Wi-Fi, or the shipyard you're in, or we switch to an air card. And the air card thing is so complicated now, it's like when Eric starts talking about, my eyes glaze over immediately because there's so many subcategories of what people look at, and there's no such thing as unlimited and all this stuff. So the variables that we have to deal with as far as what's coming in is really big. My point with all that is that to formulate basic best practices, regardless of upfront costs. Well, actually, let's just look at that for a minute. So this fictitious 60-meter boat that costs $5 or $6 million a year, how much am I going to need to budget for cybersecurity?
That's a good question because there's a lot of depending factors on that. But to your kind of insurance example, to me, it's better to pay now and to do what you can to secure your networks, to train your people, to do the best that you possibly can, than have to pay a lot more later on when it becomes a major, major issue and loss of data and information and things with the owner and things being held hostage and all of that. So.
So try to flesh that out for me a little bit. Why would it be so variable? Because once you come in and do an analysis, and that's going to be pretty straightforward, a certain amount of hours, we look at stuff, we look at your
Penetration
vulnerability.
test,
But
yeah.
now we go, oh man, your network sucks and you're totally vulnerable. Now we got to bring in the network guys and get that sorted out, collaborate. Is that why you're saying
that's what the depends is. If you start from kind of the new build process and work with the network side of it and build the network from a security standpoint, it's a lot easier to do it at that point than to come in and say, okay, now we may have to physically make changes to network infrastructure, cabling, Wi-Fi. How many IoT devices? What's connected in from the little lighting and AC control pads? How much of that stuff is connected? What network? Oh, everything's operating on one network? No good. You need to bifurcate
if I can,
that. So.
yeah. So generally speaking,
I can tell you.
and generally speaking, more not out of security, out of networks crashing, network architects, if you will, or designers or builders of them are saying no. Sort of. I think in general, it might be presumptuous of me to say, navigation stuff not connected to the network usually. A network that is bifurcated for iPads and AVIT, AVIT,
Yeah.
and then another network for Wi-Fi access?
That's all built in. There's one network. It's very simple. There's a ship's network, then there's the network on the bridge. Usually those are separate. Sometimes they're connected through CAT just in order to do some updates or whatever else it may be.
Right.
But you don't see them as connected unless you want to talk 10 years down the road, and because there's a lot of conversations around the remote controlled operations. Then you need to obviously have everything connected. But right now I see this mostly separate. And when it comes to that network, you have a good network in place. You can build it to whatever needs it needs to be. So you can set up virtual local area networks for your AV equipment, IT, and then you go into the router basically, and then you set up all the prioritizing. You set up some parameters and the likes. So it's quite straightforward from a hardware standpoint, where the actual sizzle is, or whatever you want to call it here, is in the configuration and the management thereof.
Okay.
Okay.
So just without getting too technical, but going to what you said, and especially for someone like Lee or anyone listening to understand. So boat has internet coming into it. What I'm saying, what I generally see as a manager, and again, I'm not technical enough, they are trying to say anything related to the lights and these what were you calling the Internet of Things controls? We try to separate that stuff from
Correct.
the Wi-Fi on the boat.
The actual
yeah.
there's intra-ship communication, which is usually that.
Okay.
Because you go to your iPad, you turn your lights on.
Yeah.
That's intra-ship network.
Okay.
Then the other piece that we're talking about is the communication piece. Now I turn my iPad to check my emails. Now we're going out.
Right.
We're off the ship and back to the ship, and that's
Okay.
usually satellite or terrestrial. But at the end of the day, watching the I's and O's and the behavior of all of those, that all is done through companies like ours, and that's something you want to definitely put as a line item. And while none of the cybersecurity companies provide total guarantee and protection against anything, they certainly, and like us, provide good business practices and methods and means through the other industries I mentioned before, to at least set up the network properly, to manage everything.
Yeah.
And then the component of cybersecurity services, because it sometimes seems like a smoke and mirror show more or less, but it's really not, because we don't see what's going on, but the guys, behind the screens watching the I's and O's, that is your police force, right? Those are the guys that's going to give you the peace of mind.
Right, and what's practically happening, Lee, is that guy in a unprotected boat is either an engineer, or if the boat's big enough, an ETO, which is electronics
Technical officer.
and it's actually a licensed position in commercial ships and stuff like that.
Charter guests and stuff like that.
And that's the other vulnerability. You got all this stuff with automatic connectivity as soon as you give the Wi-Fi password. It not only sucking up bandwidth, but potentially being an access point.
Because we've got to wrap up shortly. If you're coming into a yard, say it's going into a yard in Fort Lauderdale, and you're surrounded by a housing estate, and you've got lots of Wi-Fi networks and everything, that's the risks everywhere, isn't it?
Oh yeah, 100%. Wherever there's IP connectivity or Ethernet cable plugged in to the outside world, the risk
So if
is
somebody
there.
really wanted to do some serious damage, they could.
No problem.
A supply going onto a boat.
No problem. These guys, I mean, there's exhibitions that are financed by the defense, state that actually has competitions for hackers to come in, and then the brightest and the best are usually hired to work for, like, the Pentagon and the likes. So these guys, I'm telling you, if they wanted to do anything and whatever to us, if they can crack a bank, they certainly can crack anything.
And Lee, one of my clients, when I started the company 5 years ago, I met him down at what's over Rickenbacker, Key Biscayne.
Key Biscayne, yeah.
Fancy resort on Key Biscayne, and it was for ultra high wealth individuals. And someone like Colin Powell, I think it might have been Colin Powell, was a speaker, and he wasn't in office at the time. He was retired or what, but he talked about, not only was this a real threat 5 years ago, but it was also the point where the branches of the military are Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, Marines,
Army, Navy,
but
Air Force,
now,
Marines, Coast Guard.
But cyber is actually a branch
right
now. And so my client, just talking to me, not about business, about what he was there for, was just blown away by the this sort of wake up call that you're kind of experiencing in this conversation of like, whoa, and it can be really overwhelming. But again, at the same time, there's a way to manage it. And there's a way to get a handle on it where you don't.
The issue is kind of to your point, and what you were talking about too, Michael, is the fact is, there's extremely intelligent people, state, non-state actors, putting a lot of time, energy, and effort behind it. But if you do some of the basic things to protect your network, unless they're specifically targeting a person, if this is random to see what we can get and where, and your network is protected, and it's taking them longer and more time, energy, and effort they're going to go on to the next because there are so many targets. So that's, it's the home burglar alarm example is, you have the sign and the sticker on the window that says you have ADT. Guess what, as a burglar, I don't know if you actually do or you just spent $50 to buy some stickers, but I'm not going to take the chance. I'm going to go to the house 3 down that doesn't have any stickers and I don't see the wires and all that. And cyber in a way is kind of like that to say, hey, how do we protect the networks from, you know, the VSAT over? What are the satellite companies doing? But what am I doing on board and how does this work and separate and firewalls and all of this? And if someone keeps hitting something, I can't get in, I can't get past this, I can't, unless it's a targeted attack, most of the time they're going, okay, what's the next IP address in the chain?
Yeah.
So the one thing we have to remember is that the yachting industry is fun. And these guys buy these guys and gals buy these boats because they want to have
It's a good point.
fun.
Absolutely.
And this is a real dragging point. And it is with all the points, all the discussions we've had.
Yeah.
So what's the takeaway? Is that
Well, and I'm going to jump in first. A guy most of us know and really good guy, Jim Gilbert, when he left being a magazine editor, he started sharing, you know, a company that was dealing with all the mold and germ and I don't know Ebola on boats, but you know, really nasty, scary stuff that was a complete downer, and it wasn't sustainable, kind of because it was so strongly negative. Here's a strong negative with, yes, that you can easily turn this into something to lose sleep about, but it's manageable.
Right,
in
it
the-
is.
in the way
And
it's
work
done.
with the experts. Find an expert that you trust to be able to work with, just like you would with engine and refrigeration and navigation and communication. Find an expert.
A quick one then. In terms of what is deemed an expert, because you know somebody comes in, you know that Control 4 stuff.
Oh yeah.
So somebody who
automation system.
exactly somebody comes in and does Control 4 versus somebody does Crestron or a Lutron system. You know that there's levels of professionalism.
Mm-hmm.
How do you do that with cybersecurity? Somebody comes in, oh yeah, I can set your network up and so on.
Very
Just
good.
Do you have like
it's
a
just
star
like-
rating? Or
It's
the
just like
Pels
it's
or-
just like anything else is, you know, in the maritime industry, it's part of word of mouth. Hey, we had this issue. Oh, we use these guys. And I look at people who are experts just in that one particular area to say, hey, these guys are cyber security experts and can work with your network admin and system operators and your ETOs to be able to do that. And those are the kind of starting point and talk like, hey, who do you guys use to repair that engine? Oh, we use so-and-so company and they did a great job. Cyber to me
It's
is
a new.
is the
It's
same.
not a new business, of course, but for us, everything's new because we're so far behind. That's I think our biggest problem. Yeah, of course, you know, vet the companies and find out the the bios and who is behind it. A lot of times you'll see these guys from military sector coming into the commercial world, open up their own companies.
I'm
and
seeing a lot of
doing a lot of that.
ex-Navy
Yeah,
and
you see-
SEALs and stuff like that.
So you got to kind of bridge the gaps there. So it not just because you've been in cybersecurity, I mean, doesn't mean you can now run the biggest and the baddest cybersecurity
Right.
firm in yachting.
And boats are different.
And
large
exactly.
yachts, cargo lines, cruise lines,
Exactly.
completely different.
So when you started your company 4 years ago, do we
Nah,
mind if we
6.
run over by 5-10 minutes?
No.
Okay.
6 years.
Ben?
Ben's
More food, more food.
So when you started your company 4 or 5 years ago, what were you doing before?
So I've been in the maritime industry for about 25 years in maritime security. I was 8 years in the Coast Guard. So kind of started ahead of this and looked at just different threats, the physical threats, the regulatory compliance security threats. And for us, cyber was natural for us to get into that just because of we're looking at with our software platform of designing a way through that platform to be able to better monitor the networks more cost effectively to kind of help out to Mark's piece. How do we do that? And we're doing some really cool stuff when it comes to building machine learning algorithms to start to parse through this data rapidly so it doesn't slow network traffic down. So machine learning algorithms that can look at this and pull anomalies because a human can't do this. A human cannot look at this amount of data. So you have to build, specifically to how do we look at all these pieces.
We're not touching on a lot of the fun things, and hopefully the audience doesn't get too scared away of this. But you have a lot of talks around smart cities happening and 5Gs and the like. So these are purpose-built networks designed to interact with anything and everything they can, so they can create a better life for us, right? Turn off whatever this for that. And I know it's yet to happen.
Convenience
but
your life.
It's yet to happen. I live this and breathe this day and night. And Corey and I spend many hours, and Eric over beers talking about this because it's happening, and there's great advantages, but at the same time, of course, also threats. So we want to stay on the forefront, and I think we'll see some advantages coming up very soon.
And you've been in this communication thing for.
So I a bit of
This
a
is your
hybrid bird.
opportunity now to say where you are.
Who am I? Who's my daddy? And what does he do?
So you're now a new.
I'm a bit of a hybrid bird on this topic because I come from, as a kid, no phones. The beepers were the big deal to be cool. Now anything beeps, you're not cool. I mean, it's taken away from your life, right? Before it was the cool thing. And signing up for Facebook when I was in college, that's me. So by hybrid, what I mean is kind of I respect the analog era, but I really am looking up to the digital era to basically create a better life for us.
And for you, Michael, in terms of management, it sounds like this is going to be a key line item.
Yeah.
The fact you can't give you a
Yeah, again,
price
and I have to live
$1 million.
I have to live in the world of numbers. So, but no, it's very much it's an interesting conversation, but it's also like new line item in the budget. Yeah. So, and just from again incredibly flagrant operational point of view. And going to what Corey was saying, where I intentionally have, besides all of our file structure electronically, each yacht that we manage, we have a binder of their insurance in the office for when the caca hits the fan and there's no computers, a hurricane's coming, and I need to see what the policy says. And sort of shame on me, I can't say I have any clue with my fleet of yachts that I understand and know the passwords, the network access that we should, as the owner's representative. So, a lot of worthwhile takeaways.
Yeah, so you started 4 years ago. You've been hybrid
15 years.
It's a new line item
in cyber. The bigger 25 years. I look at the yacht a lot younger than I am.
Well, like Theissen said at the beginning, we are miles behind.
Yeah,
so,
very much so.
Maritime, that's why we're so vulnerable, and that's why this topic is so important. So I hope that there's going to be more of this happening, other people talking about their experiences and their best practices, because it's not just about us here.
No.
It's everyone here.
Yeah, here's what I've experienced in the past with these kind of discussions of kind of the scary factor without an action point for me. It's like, well, actually, the first time I heard this, it was about the spoofing. I was like, whoa, we better have a protocol in place. And then we were spoofed anyway because I didn't have the protocol quite down, but you learn as you go. So this is interesting because, yes, could lose sleep and get very scary, but at the same time, password manager, doing the basics, understand the infrastructure of the boats, networks that we have, put some system in place to do the basics of protection, and we're probably way ahead of the curve all of a sudden.
And one little takeaway I want to just leave this with is, can you imagine our industry, and let's say the world, on one platform, one ecosystem that's trusted, and then what efficiencies can be created through that versus what we've been doing in the past, communicating through 15 different means, not watching, monitoring anything, forgetting about doing stuff, and not working together. So bringing all of us on one platform, one ecosystem, that is management companies like Michael's and the captains out there that very much need some help, and working together on one platform be incredible, and letting the machine learning kind of give us the data that we need, right? Because data is really what's at stake here. Then we can make some really good decisions and have fun surfing and fishing without the P, right?
Let us worry about it. That's our job. Let us worry about that.
So
Let us work
fishing
with you to get.
Can be used, it's got a double meaning there.
Whoa! Very much. Great job.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank
and
you.
yes, let's do a part 2. And we say this every time we do these. Christ, the conversation's not over.
Yeah.
It's just really kicking off.
Yep. Action.
One big recommendation: cushions for you.
Yes, Michael. I was going to say that.
I'm really sore right now.
Yeti, we're here. We need. Right.